Those are just some of the top stories that we'll be looking at in about half an hour, because to take us there we've got Frances, and she's got a number on the board.
Should we play our guessing game again?
Do you know, I have no clue, but I suspect today the governor of the Reserve Bank made an announcement of 7%. So what does that number represent? So
yeah, and you're the prime time anchor, and this is prime. So this affects you if you're a commercial customer of the banks. Usually the number of the day, an easy one, it is the prime lending rate of 10.5%, which is roughly what the banks will use as a benchmark when deciding what to charge you if you'd like to borrow money to buy a house or a car. This was left unchanged today by the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee. Now, if all good things come together in our economy, we could even see this number coming down later this year. But the Reserve Bank governor had to address the risk of our politics. So let's start our coverage there. The Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, is still in his job, to the surprise of some. But the South African Communist Party did confirm today that President Jacob Zuma informed the party of his intention to replace Gordhan. The SACP has warned of consequences, though, should the economy suffer if President Zuma removes Gordhan and his deputy Mcebisi Jonas. The SACP has rejected the intended cabinet reshuffle. It won't say whether President Zuma plans to appoint former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe as Gordhan's replacement. Well, investors seem to be cheering the news of opposition within the ANC and without to Gordhan's removal. The rand strengthening again today by more than 1.5% against the dollar. Now, as we know, a lot of the moves on our currency come from global investors. So let's get a quick global investor view. Razia Khan is the MD of Africa Global Research from Standard Chartered Bank. She joins us on the line from London. Great to speak to you, Razia. Just tell me what it's been like these last few days to watch this fallout.
Well, it's been a pretty tense week for markets, given the very unexpected news on Monday that the international roadshow was likely to be cancelled. Up until then, we had seen healthy offshore investor appetite for South African assets. Things seem to be coming together nicely for South Africa. There was a return of global risk appetite, emerging markets in particular benefiting. South Africa had a current account print that was less bad than anyone had thought. There was a lot of thinking that this is an economy that stands to do a lot better with support to commodity prices. There may even have been the chance that the Reserve Bank would start to move towards easing interest rates. So investors had quite a lot that they were enthusiastic about in terms of the South Africa outlook, and then, of course, somewhat disrupted by the political risk issues.
And how damaging is this for us on the global stage, Razia? Because as I understand, I think a lot of investors really are starting to take an interest, and they have for a while, and they are understanding our political dynamics. They're understanding what is going on.
Yes, up until this time, it's probably fair to say that global factors had been responsible for the appetite for South African assets and the performance of South African financial markets. It was trading pretty much like a lot of other places. It was seen as an emerging market that would benefit from the commodity upswing. There weren't necessarily these front and center concerns about the local politics. This week, however, that came back in a big way, and this is unsettling for investors. Investors have long looked at institutions like the Treasury as really embodying the strength of what South Africa has to offer. They have known individuals at the Treasury for some time. They appreciate the transparency that's brought to bear in things like the budget process, the intent in terms of what they plan to do with medium-term policy. There's always been a very good conversation to be had about these things, and the transparency of the institution is something that is especially prized.
And we see these incredible moves every time Minister Pravin Gordhan's job is threatened. The rand goes down. Every time it looks like his job could be saved, the rand bounces back. Would you agree that investors trading this currency, maybe there's some speculation, some opportunism, but they seem to be taking sides and picking a team that they think would be good for this economy?
any investor wants to see is fundamentally a good return. And what are the conditions that might act to almost guarantee that good return? It's if they believe in the fiscal consolidation effort, if they believe there is an understanding about what will be done about some of the risks the country might face, such as the management of state-owned enterprises. Investors dislike uncertainty, and they also dislike a great deal any suggestion of a lack of credibility. So to the extent that a situation that they've been reasonably happy with is threatened, to the extent that they might have to think, are things going to be altered in South Africa in such a fundamental way that it might imply a different path for the debt outlook? These issues are incredibly damaging.
Razia, a final quick question, and just your opinion. There is an intelligence report. We haven't seen it, and the president reportedly basing some assumptions on this report about meetings that took place in London. You go to these investor meetings. Do you buy that there could be nefarious meetings going on the sidelines? Just an opinion.
It is highly unlikely that the world's asset managers, the managers of a great deal of the pension savings, would be thinking in that way. As far as investors are concerned, the aims are reasonably easy to understand. It's to seek out good investment opportunities to support a country through its development phase. Emerging, developing countries offer better returns, sometimes because of the risks associated with them. But the allegation that there is anything at all that goes on in investor meetings, that seems a bit far-fetched.
All right, thank you so much for your time this evening. Razia Khan from Standard Chartered. Let's get more now about that revelation from the South African Communist Party.